Well, hello, viewers, and welcome back to another episode of High Voltage Diesel, of course, as always. Anybody guess what day it is today? Today's garbage day. You know why? Because we're working on garbage. As usual, every day we do something around here is garbage day. Let's check out some of the garbage that we're working on. So it's been a hot minute since I've posted a video. It's been a hot minute since I've really done a whole lot of anything besides make large monstrosity towers. But we're working on the 81 Peterbilt. Not today though, because it's raining. And just about got the hinge mechanism for the dump box ready to go on. Let's give you guys a little overview. There's the dump box hinge. And here's a couple gussets that I had made that I gotta drill some holes in, but that's gonna be on another video, don't worry. Got the fenders for the 73 Duster. Got some new junk. Look at this junk. This is good junk right here. I was pretty excited about this. I bought this at a hock shop. I got hocked just about it like everything around here. I paid like dirt for this thing. It didn't run when I bought it. It needed a little bit of TLC. This thing runs like a Swiss watch now. Freaking love it. Honda motor. I have this, I don't know, 20-gallon air tank. It's alright. It's certified. There's the tag. Can you read it? It says certified. But anyway, I got this tank for it. In all honesty, this tank is safe. I looked at the inside of it with a flashlight. I've had that tank for a long time, so I got a little bit more air storage. Why do I need more air storage? Well, because this BFH of an impact gun will empty those little Mickey Mouse 5.5-gallon tanks out pretty quick. But this deal here has no problem keeping that filled with air. And I got some rigmarole going on right here with a union. And I got this air hose. And check this out even. This is a hydraulic coupler. I got the female one there. And I got the male one here. Well, I mean, it depends on, you know, your views with everything. It is 2025, guys. Come on. This might actually be the female one, and that's the male one. I don't know. But anyway, we got two couplers, and that actually works pretty good. But I haven't tried it out yet. I've tried that gun out on a different compressor, but not on this compressor with this rig. So it looks like it's going to work pretty darn good, though. Beats these just sitting in the box doing absolutely nothing. The best part about everything is I could tell everybody I'm a union guy now, because I got plenty of unions laying around. I got one there. I got one here that I use for the train horns. But anyway, let's take a look at what the actual task at hand is after we wasted about 4 minutes of your time with this bogus intro. Alright, so the actual task at hand today is I have a real live garbage truck in the driveway. 2013 Freight Shaker. And this garbage truck needs brakes on the front drive axle. You need brakes. She needs brakes, man. All the other brakes are good except these ones. It's weird. So today's task at hand, obviously, is to take that impact rattler I got, get all these bolts off, get these wheels off, and change the brakes out on this thing and get back to hauling garbage with it. Definitely not my kind of garbage truck. Garbage truck. Call it a garbage truck because the truck's garbage. Worst part about the whole thing is I got this garbage truck so close to the Peterbilt, it might actually take some masculinity out of this old thing. This has been just a sweet little compressor here. This thing always starts right up pretty easy. thing charged up that 5 gallons, just like that. Now we'll take this. Now it's gonna charge up that tank. I love this little thing. I've always wanted one of these. This thing is awesome. Alright, so it only took like a minute and a half for this thing to charge up to 125 pounds. So now it's time to plug this in. Now we got juice to that. Juice! Activate it. And now we're ready to do some Ugga Dugga. Ugga Dugga. Oh yeah. What a good job that thing did. Man, I had all them lug nuts off of that thing in like 30 seconds. And we only dropped, of course this gauge I can't see, but we only dropped maybe 10 PSI in this thing. Yeah, this was a good investment for what little bit of cash I paid for it. I'm glad I spotted this. I bought this thing here at Split Freight years ago, and this thing works awesome. I love it. I have been, in my years of existence, I've spent too long getting these lugs off on these trucks by hand with the breaker bars and pipes and jack stands and all that stuff. I paid up pretty good for that impact at the time, but very good investment. Throw those right in the mud, right? Alright, now it looks like these wheels should come right off. Good. Might be a problem. That might be a problem. I think this wheel's going to need a little bit of BFH persuasion. Not much though. There we go. Yeah. All right. Alright, now I gotta start the truck up and air it up, release these brakes, and I can pull the drum off. Yeah, let's start this garbage truck up. This is ridiculous, all this stupid safety crap on these things. Push the clutch in. You gotta push the clutch in before you do anything, and listen to this thing. Dunk! Dunk, dunk, dunk. We got 50 pounds of sailboat gas. We just gotta let her build up a little bit more so we can release the brakes. You know, in the video it looks like the DEF stuff is flashing, but it's not. It's weird that that stuff does that on these vehicles with the cameras. The depth there is solid green, and on the camera it looks like it's flashing. And I'm just gonna let her build up till the air dryer goes off, and I'll push that in now and release them, and I'll let her build up till the air dryer goes off, and then that'll hold the brakes off for a while. Alright, I just got to find the nut here to release the slack adjuster. I'm not familiar with these particular style, and this should come right off. Alright, here it is right here. It's underneath, a little 7/16. A lot of times you can just back these off, strip them out just a little bit. Back them off just enough to get the drum off, and that's usually all you need. You gotta go crazy taking the whole internals off and everything. Should come right off now. There we go. Oh yeah. Yeah, these brakes got their money's worth out of them. They're all fractured in there. These shoes are wore right down to the wear line. There's the wear line right there. The bottom one is much worse than the top. So I've actually backed this off a few turns, and so these S-cams were basically maxed right out. So, and these are backed off, and they're right at the top of the cam. So yeah, it's definitely time to put some new shoes on this old girl. Easiest way to get these brakes apart: back your S-cam all the way off, get a big pry bar in here, pull that down. A screwdriver would be easier. Get one roller out, pry bar in the top, get the other roller out. Usually by that time, your spring's usually loose enough to pop right off. Of course, it's packed with grease as usual. Some things are easier said than done. Alright, and if that fails, the easiest thing to do is to get your big punch right here, get it on there, get a hammer, whack that retainer out that holds this return spring on. Who cares, you're just taking them apart, and then everything should fall apart. Every brake is different though. Sometimes they come apart easy, sometimes you gotta fight them. Even that's going to be an issue by the looks of it. Huh. I told you today was garbage day. Alright, usually those come right off. Of course, I've done many brakes, and it's usually not a problem. It's the first time for everything, right? Figure out plan C here. Alright, so plan C is going to be to put this thing in here and stretch that spring right out. There we go. And now she comes off. There we go. And then pull these brakes off as one whole unit. Just like so. Open up our new brake shoe kit. When you start breaking stuff, taking it apart, that's the point where you wish and you hope that you didn't, that everything you ordered is the right stuff, so you don't have to put broken stuff back together. These brakes are pretty standard. There's not many different kinds that I know of. It's pretty simple for the most part. Oh yeah, you look at the new shoes versus the old ones. Pretty wore out. It's time. Assembling these is pretty simple. Just throw that in there. Give it a couple Hammurabi's. Everything on this has been a little more difficult than that in there. Another Hammurabi. Sometimes it takes a couple Hammurabis. Alright. There's a lot of different ways people have to do these brakes. There's not really anything that's right or wrong as long as it works. I like to pre-assemble mine by laying them out like this and putting these springs on. And then taking the whole assembly like this that's assembled and going like that. And you don't have to sit there and fight trying to get them springs on. Biggest challenge about doing these brakes is getting this spring in here. There's a couple different tricks you could do. A lot of times you don't even need a tool or anything, but looks like we're going to have to do something. A lot of times people use a chain and put it on. I have to try to find a chain though. That's the thing. I never have any of this stuff laying around when I need it. Now, you think I could find any other chain other than this junk lawnmower tire chain? But what you do is you take the chain and you wrap it around the bottom of your keeper here, up through, and then hook it to the spring. And then theoretically you pull on that chain and it will pull the spring where it's got to go. This is not the most ideal chain to use, but that's what I got, so let's try it out. There you have it. A little nicer chain would have done the job too, but this one does the job just as good. Alright, so now it's time to put the rollers in. Put these little retainer clips on and get your pry bar up in there good. Now watch your fingers. Always do the top one first. You put that up in there like that. And all you do is just take your little retainer clip, you pull it through until it pops in like that, and then there's your roller. A lot of guys I see like to put grease on these rollers. That's not good, because grease just basically attracts garbage to stick to it, and you know, attracts dust and all that to stick to it, and then you end up with more problems. So we'll do the same thing on the bottom one here. do the bottom one last. That way you can get your weight in there and push down, because when you put these in, it gets harder. You just want to keep your fingers out of any space that can get smashed if your pry bar slips. So there, we got our keeper now. You just pull it through like that. You can either use your finger or a screwdriver until it snaps in, and there you go. They're all in. So now it's time to put our brand new brake drum on and get the brakes adjusted up. I'll put the wheels on first. Alright, there we go. Just always take a look, make sure it looks like everything lines up, make sure you have all the right parts and all that. So now we'll put our wheels back on and we'll be able to get these adjusted. Obviously on these you got to remember to put the valve stem for the inner tire through one of the holes, usually opposite, mostly for convenience and balancing reasons, I guess. A lot of people put the inner one and the outer one in the same hole, but it makes it a real pain when you're trying to get to the inner one with the outer one in the way, so I always prefer to put them opposite, but that's just me. Alright, so I think we're going to start the compressor up, let her charge up again while we're getting all the lug nuts started. Then we can ugga dugga the crap out of them. Turn this back on. Turn the switch on. Put that to the neutral position. I knew I should have left the choke on halfway. so now it's time to somewhat adjust our brakes. So we'll get our 7/16 socket on our adjustment bolt. Keep an eye on our brake shoes here, and we'll tighten things up just a little bit. Just a little bit. Because what this is going to allow us to do is move the truck around. The reason I have to move the truck around is because, well, I'm not fortunate enough to have a garage 13 feet with a door 13 feet tall to get this truck inside. So this is my work area right here. We got to get the truck turned around so I can do the other side. And then that's when you have your partner come out, get in the truck, and go on and off the brake pedal so you can adjust the brakes the proper way. We just want to adjust them enough to where we can just move the truck for now. So we'll get that done. Alright, now it's time to give us 40 acres to turn this rig around. Yeah. Parking brake is already off, that's right. It's alright. We only do things safe around here at High Voltage Diesel. Here so we can get enough room. Here's our work area. Here's our work area right there. I have to pull way forward this time. I have to back up. Back up a little bit. Get us a little closer. Not used to driving something without a hood in front of me. It's like driving a cab over. There we go. Right about there. Go check it out. Oh yeah, it's a good work area for us. Heck yeah, I might pull ahead just a little bit more. Start taking this wheel off. All right, and that's how simple it is. Everyone says trucks are so hard to work on because they're so big and heavy and all this crap, and you know what? It took me like 3 minutes from jacking that up, pulling the wheels off, and having the brakes completely disassembled. Stuff is big and heavy, but it's very simple. You have this apart, it's a good idea to grab everything, especially these S-cams. These S-cam bushings like to go bad. These feel really tight though. Well, you have it apart, get in here, check your wheel seals, make sure nothing's leaking. Spin this around, make sure there's no cracks. Look at all your other suspension components. As things rust, especially these box trucks and dump trucks with the wood on top of the frame, I don't like that. Because what happens, here's a good example of it right here. That shit gets in between that wood, and that wood, it stays moist, and it rots the top of these frames right out. I could just about guarantee this frame is in pretty rough shape if you were to take that wood off of there. But it's not my concern right now, but I always do safety checks on this stuff. A lot of times rust will happen up here. It'll break these bolts, crack. These will get cracked a lot. Looks like our shock's a little bit rusty. Could replace those, but the customer just came to me for the brakes and that's it. Always look at airbags, where things mount. This stuff looks pretty good. The shock itself isn't really a safety thing, and just this doesn't mean the shock is bad. It just means that, you know, usually when they go bad, there's oil leaking all over. But another thing to look at is these bushings right here, where these torque arms, or whatever you want to call them, leaf springs, bolt on. A lot of times those bushings go bad and they start wobbling out. A lot of times you'll notice tire wear when that happens. All these mounts, everything looks pretty good. Check the U-bolts, make sure nothing's broke. Very important to check all this stuff out and make sure it's in good working condition. There's a lot of weight to stop. There's no excuse not to keep this stuff safe. No excuse. when it's your family on the road that's driving next to these things doing 60 miles an hour. You want things to be safe. Always look at these brake chambers, hoses, make sure all this stuff's safe. Slack adjusters, but everything looks pretty good. I don't see anything to worry about on either side. So we're gonna assemble this side the same exact way as we did the other side. Ain't that something? The same way. I always like to throw some grease and stuff like this while it's accessible and easy to get to, so we'll go ahead and do that and start putting her back together. Some of you guys that are watching me and actually know what you're doing, like I actually know what I'm doing, maybe, maybe not. Anyway, a lot of people like to spend 8 weeks trying to pound these pins right here out just to replace them with the new ones. And, well, I only replace these if they're really, really worn and they really, really need it. I don't replace these on every brake job. Some people like to. But to me, there's no sense. If they're not worn out, leave them alone. Because you can get in a lot of trouble. And you could deal with a lot of crap trying to pound these out. And get them bushings pounded out of there and pound everything in. And it's if nothing is wore out and everything looks like it's in good shape, like these are, they're not excessively worn out, leave them alone. Of course, that's my opinion, but... well, I've fixed and drove a lot of trucks before, and I've never had a problem not changing them if they're not wore out. So, if they're wore out, and they're like half-mooned kind of, absolutely change them. But if they're round still, and they're not a groove wore in there from the brake shoes, then leave them. Leave them be. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Time to do this again. Fish our handy dandy super duper chain up through here again. We got her hooked to the spring. We're just going to pull it tight. One good pull. Put the camera down. One good pull usually does it. There you go. There she's on. Alright, now it's roller time again. Top one first. Pry bar way in there. You don't always have to use your fingers too. You could just use a screwdriver. It's a little easier on your fingers. Do the bottom one last. Wrong way. Screwdriver in there again. Put those in, just do a visual inspection, make sure everything's hooked. Make sure the springs on the sides are all hooked up. Go ahead and throw our drum on. All right. There we go. There we go. I always like to throw a little oil on these threads. It just helps them tighten down a little more evenly when the threads are lubricated. Helps protect the studs a little bit. It's pretty important that these stay on here, I would imagine. Tighten our slack adjuster up just a little bit again. And we will let our jack down. Get this out of here. Done with that. Leave this under here because we'll need that. Next thing to do is get a partner and adjust the brakes. All right, hit the brakes. Release. Pretty loose. Want about an inch from about an inch of travel. So we're at 2 inches. I want it to come out to 3. Hit the brake. You gotta hold it till I tell you to release. No. Hit it a little lighter than that. All right, go. All right, release. Hit it. Release. Hit it. Release. All right. All right, hold on. Let me switch sides. Hit it. Release. Hit it. Release. Pull the yellow button out. All right, you're all done. All right, so it was really difficult to show on that truck because it's really tight down there. So basically, look at the end of my ruler. So you have the brake can, the slack adjuster, push rod, and the push rod pin. How I was taught and how I've always done it was to take your ruler and you want about 1.25 inches, an inch to 1.25 inches or so of travel on that pin. You don't want any more than that, and you don't want any less than that, because if you have any less than that, it means your brakes are probably going to rub and you're going to get stuff hot. So what I do is you can see right there that this pin is about 2.5 inches from center, from the bottom. So ideally, when the driver hits the brakes, this pin right here should move to about 3.5 to 3/4 inches on the ruler, which will give this thing here about 1.25 inches travel, and that means your brakes are in adjustment. And whatever you adjust your brakes to, it's a good idea. See, with these newer trucks, it's not as big of a deal because they all have automatic slack adjusters. So if you get them around the ballpark, they'll usually adjust to where they want to adjust, no matter how you adjust them anyways. But on the older trucks like the Pete here, it's important to adjust them all the same. If you're not going to adjust them all the same, it's important to adjust your axles the same. Have one axle, if you're only doing brakes on one axle, it's a good idea to check this stuff anyway and make sure it's adjusted weekly or whatever. But it's important to have left and right adjusted the same otherwise, especially on the steering axle. Otherwise, you'll be going down the road, you'll hit your brakes and it'll pull to the left or the right. If one side's a little bit tighter, that side will be more likely to come on a little faster than the other side, causing it to pull. So you always want to adjust them as close as you can, even with the automatic slack adjusters, because you want to give it kind of a base to start from to do what it's going to do itself. So yeah, we got the tires on the trash truck, garbage truck here, and we're going to take her for a little joyride before I bring it back and make sure nothing gets hot and all that, and then brakes are done. I'll bring it back to where it goes, and then the customer should be happy. I'm the driver of this truck. I drive this truck pretty much. I work for this company. That's why I'm not really showing much of the side of the truck, because I don't really necessarily have permission to disclose the company, which I'm sure they probably don't care. They could probably care less if their truck's on a video or not, but just to keep things top secret, man. We're only going to focus on the task at hand, so yeah, this is cool. So I'm the driver of this truck. There's one other driver, but I'm the main driver of this truck, and which is nice because I kind of get to know this truck pretty good and get to know what it needs. And the company's really nice about saying, hey, if it needs brakes, just let us know. And they actually sent the brake parts out on one of the other trucks to the warehouse that this truck stays at, and basically hired me to put the brakes on it, and they know it's in good hands, so that's pretty cool. I get to work on the truck and drive it. It's just like being an owner-operator like I've always been, but I get paid to run somebody else's truck, which honestly it's pretty darn nice running somebody else's truck and having them it's pretty nice having somebody else pay for the parts. I'm so used to being the one that puts fuel in the tank and pays for all the parts and pays for all this stuff, and man, it's nice. It didn't cost me a dime to do any of this. I got paid for it, so it really works out good. I did a good job. So the next thing we'll do is take the garbage truck for a joyride. All right, time to take this garbage truck for a ride. Gotta love this junk. Deaf, they say. What a freaking joke that stuff is. If you don't think that's a joke, unsubscribe to my channel and do yourself and me a favor. The funny part about it is my truck, believe it or not, my two trucks, the 81 and the 69, they have DEF on them too. I mean, you don't believe me, right? Let me go show you. Right there. There's the DEF on this one. And there's the DEF on this truck. Yeah, they got DEF on them. Makes you deaf while you drive them. Ha! 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 That's funny, right? I gotta say though, guys, you know, for a garbage truck, you know, this thing actually rides pretty good. I gotta be honest. I'm not that crazy. I don't like new trucks. You know, this is a 2013, but to me it's new because I'm used to working on the old garbage. 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. To me, that stuff's the way it should have stayed. But I gotta say, you know, this truck is really pretty comfortable to drive. Nice air ride seat to be nice and cushy. You know, it's got an air ride cab, air ride suspension, long wheelbase. You know, I gotta say, this thing really drives pretty darn good for being a garbage truck. Everything's garbage when it's broke down, but I gotta say, I'm not really, well, before I piss anybody off, the old two-stroke Detroits are cool. Those are pretty cool, but these new Detroits, I don't know, I've heard good things about like the 60 series and stuff, but this isn't a 60 series, this is a DD13 in this thing. The way I look at it, the best thing that ever could have happened to the DD13 Detroit junk company is the conveyor belt from the assembly line would go directly into the scrapyard, and as soon as they're made, just go right to the scrapyard. That would have done the world a favor. This thing, you look under the hood of this truck, it looks like a spaceship. There's wires, and I don't even know where the motor is. In all honesty though, like the air compressor, they put the air compressor like where the starter would be on most trucks. And I don't I don't agree with that. Aluminum block, aluminum head, all that crap. I mean, granted, it's got 527,000 miles on it, and still, thing runs pretty good. But it just, no thanks. When it comes time to work on this junk, all those wires and hoses and lines, you don't need all that stuff. There's nobody that's going to convince me that you need any of that stuff. Funny part about it is this piece of junk here doesn't get any better fuel mileage than my 3406. All that wasted effort and everything, and my 3406 gets just the same fuel mileage as this thing does. I don't know if it's the exact same, but it's pretty close because I drive them both, and junk 10-speed. Yeah, they're alright. Definitely not my favorite thing to drive. But whatever. You really don't need any more than 10 gears for potato chip trucks like this. Light loads. This thing ain't never seen a heavy load, you know, compared to the world I come from. But I gotta say, it does ride pretty good. I'm just glad I'm not the one that has to work on the mechanical. As far as brakes and tires and stuff like that I'm alright doing, but when it has a problem like a starter or anything like that to get replaced, I'm glad I'm not the guy that gets nominated to hire to work on that stuff. It just gets too darn hard to keep all that maintained in central New York where I live. All that salt and everything gets all over everything. It's just a pain, man. It doesn't get any easier. So far we're stopping pretty good, even though you don't ever notice a difference in the pedal anyway. Even though I'm not a fan of these Detroit deals, that's what Detroit stands for, Detroit deals. I gotta say, I really gotta say, the frickin' Jake brake in this thing actually holds you back pretty good. I gotta say, whatever they got going on with the Jake brake, that holds you back pretty good. This is a very steep hill that I'm going down right now, and it's slowing me right down. Granted, we're empty, but still, that's really not bad at all. But the stupidest part about this setup, the Jake brake, if you listen, look at the speedometer, cuts out at 30 miles an hour. Miles an hour, and she cuts out. Now, to the person that invented that thing to have the Jake brake cut out at 30 miles an hour, I want to ask you directly from High Voltage Diesel, are you out of your cotton picking mind? I want one of my audience members here to write a comment and tell me, why is it a good idea for a Jake brake to cut out at 30 miles an hour under any circumstance? That makes no sense to me. Maybe I'm just used to driving real trucks. I don't know, but make the Jake brake cut out at 30 miles an hour is completely cockamamie to me. It makes no sense at all. You know, especially around here, like, you know, this company, I deliver animal feed, pallets of animal feed, which, you know, granted isn't a super heavy load to deliver, but, you know, around here there's a lot of steep hills to go up and down, and you know, that Jake brake is pretty nice when you're going up and down these little knobs. Even if you're only going, you know, 15, 20, 30, 40 miles an hour, it's really nice to have a Jake brake that goes all the way down to idle, no matter what the speed is. So, I don't know, maybe whoever invented that is some flatland driver, but he is a pretty experienced, heavy, you know, heavy hauling, not a super heavy hauling, but you know, I spent a majority of my trucking career, if you call it that, hauling excess of 100,000 pounds, logs, wood chips, equipment, you know, and to have a Jake brake cut out at 30 miles an hour when you kind of want it, I don't want to say the most, but at 30 miles an hour, you know, if you're coming down, you know, example, right here's a perfect example. 35 miles an hour, we're going around this steep corner right here, sharp corner I guess I should say. You know, if we had 12 tons in the back of this thing, it's not a super heavy load, but man, we're going downhill. It would be really nice to have that Jake brake coming around these corners so you don't have to ride the service brakes. A couple doggies out there watching us. That would be so nice. But apparently apparently some nincompoop thought it was a good idea to have the Jake brake cut out at 30 miles an hour. So you can't have it as an option when you're going slow, so whatever. How long did that rant take? About 6-7 minutes. Well, we're gonna get out in a minute here to check and make sure these brakes aren't getting hot and smoking. We should be in good shape. Let's see what we got. Oh, we ain't got smoke pouring out of nothing. Let's get our hands in here and they're a little warm, but they're not crazy warm. They usually get a little warm the first couple trips anyway. We did just come down a hill and stuff. Yeah, if you lay your hand on it, they burn you, but, you know, they're equally as warm. Let's check the ones we didn't do. The ones we didn't do are a little bit warm too. I might back them off just a little bit. You know, a lot of times, you know, you start with an inch or so of travel, and then if it gets a little hot, you'll usually have to, you know, you back them off a little bit just so nothing burns up. I'll probably crawl under there and back them off. Well, I came back to the shop and they are cooler now, so I can't get in there, but now they're much cooler than they were, so I think I'm just gonna leave it alone. Like I said, the best part about this is I drive this truck myself every day, so you know, I can keep an eye on it, keep my 7/16 wrench with me, and if there's a problem I could just adjust it a little bit, but I think we're in good shape at this point. So go ahead and bring it back to the yard. All right, off we go. And we just came down a pretty decent hill when I stopped on the side of the road back there and checked, and they're much better now. They're a lot cooler, so you know, just when you put new parts together, you know, you put new shoes on a new drum and all that, and you know, everything kind of has to break in, so that's why it's good to take it for a nice, you know, like a 10-mile little trip and just kind of, you know, use the brakes normally, and you know, just before you give it back and stuff. But you know, like I said, yeah, this is a customer's truck, but I'm the driver, so I'm not worried about it. If this was actually going back to like a customer that drove it, I would take it for, you know, another 10-mile ride or so and just make sure everything's fine. You know, the last thing you want to do is give it back to somebody and, you know, have them have a problem or something on the road. You know, especially if it's somebody like most people that drive these trucks these days, they don't have a clue what happens. They don't know how anything works. They don't look at nothing. They don't check anything. They just, all they do is get behind the wheel and drive and eat sandwiches all day and drink soda, and that's pretty much it. You know, that's most of the truck drivers these days, steering wheel holders. So, you know, you got to make sure that when you do work for a lot of people these days that you're very thorough, because most people aren't going to look at nothing. They're not going to look and be like, oh, well, that brake's getting a little hotter than that brake, maybe there's a problem. They're just, the only time they're going to recognize a problem is when something catches on fire or whatever. All right, we're back at the yard. Let's give her one more feel here. Yeah, they're a little warm because I was just riding them again, but nothing crazy. Yeah, I'll just give this side another little feel. Yeah, they're equally warm again, but I was just riding them a little bit, so they'll be all right. Everything will wear in as long as they're not hot, so hot that they're smoking and really hot, but we're in good shape now. All right, so we were in the same spot when we started. We have the Freightliner garbage truck dropped off back at the yard. Brakes look like they're gonna hold up for a while. Everything's good. Best part about it is I get to keep everything. They told me I can keep what I want. So I can keep the drums. These are good to scrap, but they're also good to use as stands. You flip these over and put a post on that with a vise or something. That works pretty good, or a mailbox or whatever. I usually keep these hanging around. They're good to have. You gotta jack a truck up and you need a jack stand. They work really good for that. You know, there's a use for everything. These old rollers that come out, if you gotta like pound a bolt or something out of something and you need a pin, or you gotta press something with a press, you know, or pop something out with a hammer or whatever, you put this on top of it, you whack it with a hammer. I mean, there's use. I mean, the springs there's not really a use for. I'll throw that in the scrap pile, but everything, there's a use for everything. That's why I'm a little bit of a junk hoarder and I keep everything around, because you never know when you're gonna use something. Of course, I can't find it for the life of me, but anyway, here's these giant, massive pins right here for my dump box project. I got these pounded out about that far when they were in, and I needed to pound them the rest of the way. And I don't know where it is, but there's two cutoffs from the axle. When I tubbed my Duster, I had two 6-inch cutoffs from the axle shafts that I put in here and I whacked out. I mean, you know, and those rollers, I actually used a couple of those old rollers I had laying around to get it a little of the way, but when I had to go further, I used that axle. So stuff like that is exactly what I'm talking about. When you need something like that to pound something out, you know, something sacrificial, it's good to have on hand. Because otherwise, the only other thing to use is a good socket. And by the time you're done beating a pin like that out, the socket is not a good socket anymore. Well, guys, with that being said, thank you for tuning in to another episode of High Voltage Diesel. I hope you learned something. If you did or you didn't, throw in the comments what you think of my shoddy brake job I did on the garbage truck. And let me know everything I did wrong. For the people that had an armchair meltdown, I want to hear it. It's always something to learn every day. So until next time, we will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.